Yo, it is Big Board Monday, and Leif Thulin, aka the Grinder, will be sharing his latest big board. Now, in his last big board, he had Jabari Smith falling to fourth, and I know people thought he was crazy, but find out if Jabari Smith is moving up or staying put here on the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast. All right. Happy Monday. You are listening to the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast, your daily NBA draft podcast. I am Rafael Barlowe, the director of scouting for NBA Big Board and the founder of NBA Draft Junkies. Now, me personally, I've made a name for myself as the guy that knows the international prospects. But my co-host, Leif Thulin, is known as the Grinder because he spends more time watching college basketball film than anyone else. And today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline is where the game starts. All right, Leif. Man, I heard you had a crazy weekend. 76 hours of working, doing commentating. Is that correct?
Yeah, between a couple jobs, it's about that much, and the 1 hour drive up to call games for a 6-game homestand and back. So tired and haven't been able to watch as much film this week as the reputation that precedes me has. But I did put a lot of time into putting together a big board that I published, and that's what we're going to go off of. And the top 20, little shameless plug, top 20 have in-depth breakdowns. So if you want to see the reasons for why they're ranked where they are, check that out.
AKA the Grinders. Not only is he covering minor league baseball, driving hours back and forth, working 76 hours on a weekend, he still had time to put out a big board. And not only is it just a big board with the names and the rankings, he's given examples, or he gave supporting reasons why he has each player ranked where they are ranked. This is not just a list that he put down 1 through 20 and sent it out. They don't call him the Grinder for nothing. All right, so let's get right into it. At number 1, I agree with this wholeheartedly. I've been riding the Paolo Banchero train all season, and I would take him number 1. I think that people are over or undervaluing him like they did Jason Tatum back in 2017. I had posted a tweet a few days ago, and it was basically a scouting report. It was from NBADraft.net. And it was everything that they said about the weaknesses for Jason Tatum were literally pretty much the exact same things that people were saying about Paolo Banchero. And if you look back at that draft, Markelle Fultz, I think he was the best college player that season. I'm not, that was a mistake, but I think at the time, I don't think it was too crazy. But Lonzo Ball, I was never a guy that thought Lonzo Ball was better than Jason Tatum. And here we are now. I think in a redraft, Tatum obviously goes number 1. And some team is going to make the same mistake by passing up Paolo Banchero. But if it goes the way me and you have it, then that won't happen. So I've kind of shared my thoughts on Banchero all season. What makes you so high on Banchero, and why do you have him as the number 1 player on your big board?
I had Chet for a while as my number 1 in my last 2 big boards, and I kept saying to those who'd asked me, like, how big is the gap between Chet and the rest? And I was saying it's hair tight. It's unbelievably close between he and Paolo. And I think what changed my mind, and I wouldn't even say changed my mind, but just like put me over the top on pulling the trigger at putting Paolo number 1, is that I think Paolo is that much better on offense, that Chet is that much better on defense than Paolo. And in today's NBA, I'm prioritizing the guy who can score me 25 points a game, give me 8 rebounds and 4 or 5 assists in a couple of years, over the guy who has a chance to be a good offensive player and has to work to become that all NBA level defender that Chet can be. So I think Paolo is not much, like, he's a solid defender in my opinion. And so the gap between he and Chet on defense is just as wide as the gap between Chet and Paolo on offense. And that's why I'll take the money to the bank that the guy who's good on offense and can be good on defense, and it's sometimes an effort thing with him, I'll take my money to the bank on that one. And I think the tweet you sent out for Jason Tatum was spot on. And I think in that class, I also had Jason Tatum ahead of Markelle Fultz, and I think it was a similar rationale.
Yeah, I'm glad we agree. The crazy thing about Banchero, you hear about, his defense. He averaged almost 2 stocks per game. I think it was like, if he played 37 games, he may have had 36 blocks, but he averaged over a steal per game. And I know, the basic stats don't always, give you a great indicator of how good somebody is on defense, but the way people make it seem as if he was just a horrible defender, I think some of it is effort. But again, you can say the same thing about Tatum. And then I also feel like a lot of times, and I mean, this happens in the NBA, when you have a great rim protector behind you, I think guys have a tendency to let somebody go by them because, they know somebody's going to clean it up. We've seen it happen with the Utah Jazz pretty much entirely Rudy's career. And I think even with Gonzaga, some of their players used to let guys get by them because they knew Chet was going to clean it up and so on. So I agree with Banchero number 1. You have Holmgren number 2. Now, again, this is not news if you've been following the podcast, but you still have Jaden Ivey over Jabari Smith. And one of the things I really, really like and appreciate about you is that you are not afraid to go against the consensus. I can imagine how many people have seen your big board from Twitter and just tried to argue up and down of why Jabari should be number 1. But what I appreciate about you that I think is different than a lot of people is you're not letting any like media influence your big board. And I wanted to tweet about it, and I probably will. One of the reasons why I like scouting in Europe is because I don't have any biases coming into it. Like, I don't know who a lot of the guys are. So I'm only going by what I see. I don't know what they did 2 years ago. Like, I'm coming in with a blank slate. And I feel like a lot of people that are critiquing big boards, they have allowed bigger media platforms to determine who they like, who they don't like. And it's almost like if everybody watched college basketball this season, if they watch games with no volume, didn't hear what commentators are saying, I think big boards will look really different, right? So that's a whole different subject. So tell me why you have Jaden Ivey over Jabari Smith.
I think it's for the same reason we spoke about last time. It's that Jaden Ivey to me has this top end potential that if he were to hit on all cylinders, he becomes a really good ball handler, a really good pick and roll navigator, and couples that explosive speed first step into what he could be. He looks similar to Ja Morant, maybe like a mix of Ja Morant and like Dwayne Wade if he hits that top ceiling. And I'm not saying he necessarily will, but I see that as a top ceiling, whereas the top ceiling I see for Jabari Smith is far lower. And I see his most likely outcome and probably top ceiling as being a supplementary score, a very good one at that. That could be a multiple-time all-star, but not a franchise-changing superstar. And when you're taking a pick in the top 4 picks, and this is obviously a big board, not a mock draft, so I'm not picking for fit here. But if you're picking in those picks, you're looking for a guy who can alter your franchise. I think Paolo Banchero can do that. I think with the right supporting cast, Chet Holmgren can do that. I think Jaden Ivey can do that if he's given the rock and is given the ability to rock. And I think Jabari Smith he was probably my favorite player of those 4 to watch in college. But you watch it from a different lens when you're evaluating them for the NBA fit. And he may have been the best college player with his efficiency. All of them were great, but Jabari doesn't have the same ceiling. And I think he needs a star to be the on-ball dominant player. And the other 3, well, Chet's a little different, but Ivy and Paolo in particular do not. They are that on-ball talent that can transcend a franchise and really change the trajectory of a franchise.
Yeah, I want to talk about this more at length in the second segment because I have some comments of my own on Jaden Ivey. And I want to ask you about a swing skill for him. But I want to talk to the audience about Truebill. And the question is, do you know why free trials renew without your consent? And that's because it is a business scam to get you for your dinero. Do not let the greedy corporations pocket your money. Download Truebill to take control of your subscriptions. And Truebill is a new app that helps you identify and stop paying for subscriptions you do not need, want, or you simply forgot about. On the average, people save up to $720 a year with Truebill. And that's because companies make the subscriptions hard to cancel. Truebill makes it incredibly simple. Just link your accounts and Truebill will cancel your unwanted subscriptions in just one tap. There's a guy named Matthew who says in a matter of seconds, he saved $660 for the year on his DirecTV bill. I do not know how you don't know your DirecTV bill, but he said he also saved $120 a year on a Sirius XM bill and $840 a year on car insurance. Now, do not fall for the subscription scams. You can start canceling today at truebill.com/lockedonnba. Go right now, truebill.com/lockedonnba. All right, the ultimate NBA mock draft starts on June 16th. With over 50 insiders, nothing equals the ultimate NBA mock draft. The Locked On NBA Big Board Draft experts, including myself and Leif, plus the Odyssey insiders. The first pick is June 16th. Search the ultimate NBA mock draft and follow now so you do not miss a pick. All right, once again, this is Rafael Barlowe, a.k.a. I don't even have an AKA. I guess I need to come up with one. But this is Rafael Barlowe. Oh, I forgot to thank you. Thank you for each and every person that has made the NBA Big Board podcast your first listen of the day. I don't know why I forgot to thank you. It's usually something I do at the top of the show. All right, Leif, let's talk about Jaden Ivey for a second. Now, I agree that he has the potential to be a superstar. The Dwayne Wade comparison is kind of new. I've seen more so Ja Morant. I've seen Russell Westbrook. And I feel like in order for him to reach that maximum potential, he'll need to improve his mid-range shot. Now, what are your thoughts on the mid-range pull-up? Like I had the stats and I did it in an article. I think he only shot like 29% on jumpers off the dribble. Do you think that's an easy fix for him?
Yeah, I think that's not necessarily an easy fix, but I think that's something he'll see so often because of his blazing speed that I think he'll be able to do. Because if you watch him shoot the ball, his form looks fine. He shoots the ball pretty well off the bounce, even from three. And so once he finds the intermediate game, and that's what Ja Morant is. Well, the reason I compare him at all there is obviously the blazing speed and the ability to get the rim at will. But Ja developed a floater in a mid range, and Jaden Ivey shot well out of the pick and roll, and he was able to hit the roll man well. So I think that kind of intermediate game navigation, as well as shooting floaters and then finding roll men while getting into that teeth of the defense at the nail. For those who don't know, the nail at the free throw line, once he gets to that area and then can throw down to the shooters in the corner, to the dunker spot, and hits mid-range jumpers and floaters, that is his swing skill. Because I think he's already a plus to NBA defender when he puts his mind to it. He has the speed, finishing ability. So if he's able to put it together and make those shots, that's the swing skill. And I have a lot of faith that he'll be able to do that. It may take half a season, but I think if you say, well, let's give this guy half a season, and he figures that out, you've got a star at your hands.
All right. Now, this is where we disagree. He has Shaedon Sharpe at number 6. And in your opinion, why is Shaedon Sharpe above Keegan Murray and Johnny Davis, guys that have proven themselves on the college level? And Keegan Murray, in my opinion, you can make a case and say he was the best player in college basketball last season. Definitely was super productive. And Johnny Davis had strong year, 19 points, 8 rebounds per game. You were going with the unproven Sharpe over those two. The floor is yours. Explain why.
I'll preface this with saying that Sharpe is my least confident rank in the top 15. Okay. Just because there's not a definitive part of film that I can really watch and say, well, this will translate because I saw him do it against college players. This will translate because I saw him do it at the highest level. Even in like U19, you don't get to see him. So it's against high schoolers. Yeah, this is an upside swing. And I considered moving him down to 9 because of that same thing. The guys following him have a ton of production. But then I decided, well, if you're taking a guy top 5, 6, you may want to ride upside. And what he has in spades is 2 traits that make NBA guards very good. He's got size and he's got athletic ability that scouts will drool over. And you see those dunks in the pro days. I'm not a fan of dunking in pro days because that tells me nothing, but that shows the athletic ability. He also, at the high school level, was able to create a boatload of space and a plethora of moves. He's big. He's got silky smooth like strides. Is he a question mark? Do I feel less confident about him? Absolutely. But is there a chance he has a higher potential than Keegan Murray, Johnny Davis, AJ Griffin, Benedict Mathurin, those guys? I think so too. And so I'm going to trust the intel. And I think people move him down because of the intel at the combine, because he was hidden. He didn't play, but everyone had him number 5 before the combine. I think there was a reason for that because of the natural talent he possesses. So he may need to be coddled and brought along slower, but I think he's got more upside than just about anyone in this draft.
So here's my debate with that. When everyone had him at number 5, it was based off of what? The Peach Jam. So I do think that, and actually I was able to get access to watch the games. I do think that if a big platform like ESPN says Leif Thulin is the 5th best prospect in this draft, there are people that are going to say you're the 5th best prospect. They're going to mock you, right?
I don't blame them. I know.
So I do think a lot of people followed, and a lot of people have made strong cases for him. And these are just general fans, just off of what they saw on highlights. So this is where I'm torn at, because if Jaden Ivey, Yannick Sosa, Patrick Baldwin Jr., Peyton Watson, Caleb Houston, if none of these guys step a foot on the basketball court this season, they would be in the same, we'd be talking about them as lottery picks. Like, that's the part that
you make very valid points there. I can't argue any of that.
I mean, at one point, like, people thought that Jaden Hardy had a chance of being the number 1 pick. They were comparing him to maybe a little bit less explosive Jalen Green, but they thought that he had maybe more upside as a lead guard. So he plays this season, and I mean, there's a chance it could still happen, but he doesn't have the same pizzazz around his name as he did coming into the season. Yannick Sosa, people thought he was going to be a top 5 pick. Now it's a chance he may not even get drafted. Patrick Baldwin Jr., same thing. And there's still some people that believe in him as a 1st-round pick, despite the fact that he hasn't really looked good in 2 years. And he's dealt with a couple injuries, and some people are still thinking that he's a top 5 pick, all based off of what he did prior to college. I'm a guy that I go by, what did you do in college on the highest level? Now, Sharp could end up going as high as 4, but then I've seen some reports, and I've talked to some people, and they were saying that he could be someone that falls on draft night, because they say like a team like Portland is probably not going to take a risk because they're trying to win now. They're saying like Indiana, that's not necessarily their front office's history of taking big swings. Then I think they say New Orleans may not do it because they don't necessarily have a need at that position. They say San Antonio, probably not going to take that swing. So they were saying that he could possibly fall to like a New York Knicks team, which I'm sure Knicks fans would love it. So it'll be very, very interesting to see where he goes on draft night. All right, so another question I have for you is, I'll say you got Keegan Murray at number 7, you got Jalen Duren at 8, Benedict Mathurin at 9, Jaden Hardy at 10. All right, so despite the fact that, and we just talked about him, he didn't have like the greatest season, you're still a believer in Jaden Hardy.
Yeah, I was expecting this question, so I think I got a good answer for this. And obviously, everyone has their own opinions, but my speech for Hardy and as to why I think he's a top 10 prospect is, one, I watched him in high school, and we talked about like prior watching, and I don't factor it in too much. There are some players such as Caleb Houston I have in my 40s because I saw him in college struggling some things. Long story short, though, with Hardy is I think he earned the opportunity at a pro basketball at 18 years old, now 19 years old, to be the man. on a team that featured fellow lottery picks or expected lottery picks. There's 3 guys on that team that'll likely go in the first round, and maybe 4. And he earned the opportunity to be the guy. He was inefficient, but as an 18-year-old playing against pros, I expect inefficiency. But what you don't see in that inefficiency is the shots he was able to create, the wiggle he has. His athletic traits are not like bounce out of the gym, but he's got good burst, good quickness, good first step. He creates a lot of space on step backs and I saw him throughout the year. He really started slowly. And as he became accustomed to professional basketball and the physicality with which they play in the G League, Jaden Hardy continued to get better, had games where he was excellent. And I don't think in a team where there's a lot of talents, they all deferred to his talent. And not deferred, that's not right the word, but he was the guy. And I saw flashes of playmaking, which is the big question. Is he just Cam Thomas? And I think that's a fair question, but can he play make? I think so. And if you're telling me he's the go-to scorer and one of the better players in a league that's full of grown men as 18 years old, I think he warrants a top 10 pick. And you try to cultivate those unique skills that he was able to display, at least at parts, in a professional league.
Yeah, I want to touch on Jaden Ivey, but I got to talk to the audience about BetOnline. And that's because BetOnline is your number one source for all of your betting stats and sports info. You can find all of the latest sports developments, news, and odds, including this year's NBA Finals, NHL Hockey Conference Finals, MLB, and of course, fighting news, MMA, UFC, and boxing. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline is where the game starts. All right. Once again, it's Rafael Barlowe, Leif Thulin, and we left off with Jaden Hardy. And I've had a chance to watch his film, and I do think that he does have a little bit more point guard, elite ball skills than Cam Thomas. I don't think that he was really able to showcase it, but it's almost a situation where I don't know if he goes 10, like where you have him at. I'm not sure about that. If he ends up going, let's say in the teens, then he actually lost money by playing in the G League Ignite, right? For the G League Ignite. So I wonder, is that the theory behind what everything that went on with Shaedon Sharpe? Because once ESPN said that he was, the top player in the 2022 high school class and was a projected top 5 pick in 2023, and he ended on such a high note last year, from the standpoint of the people around him, his camp, whatever, it made sense just to say, you know what? His stock is super high. Let's just do what we have to do to protect his stock. And Jaden Hardy probably was their best example, because when I did, you look at all the old preseason coming into the season projected mock drafts, Hardy was top 5, top 7 at the very minimum. And now he's not even, getting a lot of buzz for being a lottery pick. So, it just shows that there's a huge cat and mouse game between advisors, scouts. It's crazy. And I think that this is going to be the trend. If Sharpe ends up being a top 5 pick, then what player that do we think that is going to be in the 2024 draft all of a sudden pops up eligible for 2023? All right, let's talk about another player that we're both high on, and that is Blake Wesley. I've been hearing nothing but good things about Blake Wesley and his workouts. I did an article on NBABigBoard.com, and he was one of the 4 players that I had been hearing was rising. He's been working out with teams that are projected to go in the lottery, so I think that is very good for him. And I know you've talked about it before, and I think somebody kind of mentioned it on Twitter about why are you so high on Blake Wesley. So this is your chance to tell the audience who may not have saw the tweet, why are you so high on Blake Wesley?
I think Blake Wesley is similar to Jaden Ivey in the way that you can't teach burst, you can't teach acceleration. The way he gets the rim at ease is really impressive. He didn't finish fabulously, but I'll take it as someone who gets to the rim easily and puts on strength and finishes well. And I also think Blake Wesley, and you and I have spoken about this before, Blake Wesley entered a Notre Dame team that made the tournament that had 6 seniors. He was the lone freshman, hadn't played much EYBL basketball due to COVID. And he came in and was the best player, and he fit on the court immediately at a high-level team that was just a minute away from making the Sweet 16. They barely lost to Texas Tech at a game I was at, and I was sitting behind the Notre Dame bench, and you could just see Blake Wesley. When they needed a bucket against one of the best defenses in college basketball, they gave it to Blake Wesley to isolate against NBA level guards like Kevin McCullough, and he would blow by them, get to the rim. If he finished, that was another story. And I think part of it was nerves. He got added. You told me he added about 9-10 pounds. His jump shot's looking more fluid. And I think he's already an NBA level defender at a youthful age, getting better as a jump shooter. And there's no stopping him getting to the rim. And he's got a very good handle at a young age. And I think that if he's able to shoot NBA level, like league average level, I think you've got yourself a potential steal. And he reminds me a little bit of Tyrese Maxey, who was a guy I was pretty high on in that draft class. And he's obviously been very good for the 76ers so far.
And that's who he compared himself to. I sat down with Blake and did an interview. He told me that I believe he said he got to campus at 175. And right now he's at about 189. I think that's what he told me. This was a few weeks ago. And when I was asking him who was a good player comparison for him, and Maxey was one of his comparisons. I didn't see Maxey when I saw him. I thought that he had a little bit of Michigan Karis LeVert in his game, as far as just kind of being like
I can see that.
Yeah, someone that I think at one point they were playing LeVert at the point, but just someone that can create his own shot. And the thing about Blake's athleticism is it's not like Ivey's, because Ivey's is just pure like explosiveness, and Blake's is like this sneaky, smooth athleticism, and that part does remind me of Maxey. But yeah, I'm high on Blake. I think that he should be a lottery pick. One of my ideal fits for him would be Washington, and maybe even Atlanta. But before we wrap this episode up, and I know you've probably you're preparing for this question. You have Johnny Davis at number 16. Johnny Davis's consensus on most big boards as a lottery pick. So you're not impressed by the 19 points, the 8 rebounds, the motor, and everything that he brings to the table? You just weren't I shouldn't say not impressed. You're just not as high on him as the consensus. Why is that?
Yeah, I was impressed by it. I'm not as impressed by as the consensus is. I have a number 16 on my board, so not too far out. The reason that I have him at 16 is I don't see the way he scores being as translatable in the NBA. And I think people that have him in the top 6, 7, and that's not terribly common, but people have him there. I think they expect him to be a go-to scorer. And I don't see him scoring the way he scored in college in the NBA. The only guy in the NBA who really scores that way, that is about his size, is DeMar DeRozan, and DeMar DeRozan is an anomaly. Johnny Davis scores by shooting over smaller guards, and he's got very good touch around the rim with floaters and mid-range game. I don't see him at all as a lead scorer at some point, and I could be wrong, and I hope I'm wrong because I like the guy. But I see him more as a Josh Hart role, someone who can rebound the ball, use his athletic traits to help a team hit open shots, and defend at a decent level. And I was very high on Josh Hart, actually. I had him about at 17, 18 on my big board, and I've got Johnny Davis at 16. They came in with different acclaim. Josh Hart went 30th to the Lakers. But I think that the way Davis scores isn't necessarily easy to do in the NBA, and his jump shot, which he shot well from the free throw line, which makes me believe he can make standstill shots. He didn't have the greatest efficiency down the road in the season. And I think that if you want a guy in the top 10, you want him to be a primary scorer for the most part, unless they're a defensive absolute stud. And he's not bad, but I don't see him that way. And I see him more as a complementary piece that can be a 3 and D. And that's the range I would take a 3 and D that I see the level of Johnny Davis's play. So that's kind of my rationale.
See, I like Davis. I think that the shooting can be fixed. I think he shot 38% on catch and shoot jumpers this year. And in a reduced role where he's not taking as many tough shots and the entire defense isn't focused on him, I think he can be effective. I think if he can improve the 3-point shooting, then it opens everything up for him as far as being able to attack a closeout. And I just think that he is starting to be a little bit underrated in a sense. And I will say, like, the efficiency towards the end of the season, I think a lot of that is related to when he sprained his ankle. He wasn't the same player. And then, and you look at in context, he was not surrounded by very much floor spacing and shooting. So I think that played a big role in his shot selection and him taking tough shots. Now, yes, he does rely on the mid-range game, and that's not very analytics friendly in an analytics driven NBA. So I can see the concerns there, but you brought up valid points, and only thing we can do is just kind of wait and see what happens, and we can revisit this in about a year. Well, man, thank you so much. We're running out of time. I mean, this episode could have went on for 2 or 3 hours because your big board is so different and against the grain, which is something that I really appreciate. But before we go, I want to talk to the audience about the Locked On NBA podcast, from the first jump ball of the play-in tournament all the way until the end of the NBA Finals, which could be this week. We could have a new champion by the end of this week. But check out the Locked On NBA podcast. I mean, they have insight and analysis that are not only affecting the teams in the playoffs, but affecting all 30 teams. Once again, this is Rafael Barlowe. My guest, my co-host, Leif Thulin. He just gave us a glimpse of his big board. And Leif, before we go, where can they see your full big board at?
My full big board is on my Twitter page. It's posted there, and it's linked to Fanspo Sports, and I'll repost it and retweet it when this podcast comes out. And I'm looking forward to hearing what you guys think. And like Rafael was doing, poking holes in my theory is fully supported. I would love to discuss with you guys what you think about the board, and more breakdowns are coming in the coming days.
All right. Thanks again. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, man, we're all just doing our big boards and our mocks. None of us are right. The NBA teams aren't going to be right. So nobody's right at this point. It's all what we think is going to happen. We're all just kind of guesstimating and hoping. So this is what makes this so much fun. So once again, it's Rafael Barlowe. He is Leif Thulin. He just gave you his big board, and we are out.